So Mark and I, as we planned this out, we're kind of doing a point and counterpoint thing. Imagine like the Muppet Show, Statler and Waldorf, except we're not agreeing with each other. Um, and so this is going to be a friendly debate about the merits of AI.
Anyway, well, good day, everyone. Today is May 1st. Here we are with X in Practice. We've got a few people today. Actually, it's just Mark, Todd, and I. Today, we are here to talk about the age of Copilot and coming AI, which some people may appreciate. Others may be running for the hills, thinking of Will Smith in one of those movies from the future.
I haven't seen any of the movies from the future yet, so I'm waiting.
You should catch them when they come out.
I've heard good things.
So we're going to talk about why do you want AI, potential uses, and then obviously touch on some resources at the end. So we're going to jump right in.
So Mark and I, as we planned this out, we're kind of doing a point and counterpoint thing. Imagine like the Muppet Show, Statler and Waldorf, except we're not agreeing with each other. And so this is going to be a friendly debate about the merits of AI.
Yeah, so part of it is we tried to use AI a bit in creating these slides, which made it more interesting. So you're going to notice that my side of the thing is a little more cynical than Todd's, perhaps, because of my experiences doing this. So one of the first things I did was I created that slide that we were just on that had the quick outline of what we were going to talk about. And so then when I had opened PowerPoint, the image on the right, that little pop-up came up and said, well, you should use Copilot to do this. So I thought, well, that sounds good. I said, so I asked Copilot, summarize this presentation for me. And that's what I got on the left, is basically what was on the previous slide plus some extra words. So that was an interesting experience. And so I tried to use PowerPoint or Copilot in PowerPoint a number of times in this, and I'll talk about that a little bit on more slides.
Always with hysterical results.
Hysterical.
Hysterical. That AI is so hysterical. What a kidder. So one of the things when I talk to people about AI is there's just some kind of level setting that you have to do in order to get AI. And one of the things is don't think of it as a computer program. It's not like calculator or notepad or anything like that. Think of it as like a person, like an entity, like an intelligence. And the reason for that is kind of because it's probabilistic, it's not deterministic, which seems like word salad, but deterministic means, the inputs determine the output. So, if you go to calculator, you say 2 + 2, you're going to get 4 every time. Calculator is deterministic. Probabilistic means there's calculations going on in the background and probabilities are being calculated. And the thing that you get at the end is a probability. It's not deterministic. And that's how AI is. So there's a lot of people who have a lot of fun saying, "Oh, I asked AI to add 2 + 2 and it gave me 42 buffalo." What's that mean? That doesn't make any sense. They're not thinking of AI correctly. So think of it as an intelligence. Don't think of it as a piece of software. And then the next thing I tell people to do is think about what role you want the AI to play in whatever the task you're doing is. So like Mark's example, when it offered to Gussie his slides up for him, it was probably acting as a creator at that point. It was offering to create his slides and things for him. But you don't always want that. Sometimes you want to use AI to review a document you've already written. So I've done that before. I've put documents into AI and said, can you check the voice on this for me? Can you make this sound more formal? Can you read this and tell me any problems? I don't want it to create things. I want it to review the things that I've already done. Or sometimes collaborating. And that's a great example for how I code with it. I'll say, hey, I want to write a piece of code that does blah. It'll spit out some code that'll be 80 to 90% good. I'll be VS Code and I'll tweak it and then I'll paste it back in and say, I added this stuff, add some examples, things like that. But it's always important to understand the role you want AI to do. And we're going to talk later about prompting, and knowing what role you want will impact how you prompt, and how you prompt impacts the success with the AI. One of the things that I really love about AI, and a buddy of mine introduced me to this phrase. I don't think he came up with it, but it was the tyranny of the blank page. So one of the things that AI is really good at is helping me start something. Anytime I'm asked to speak at a conference or something like that, there's a variety of topics I can talk on, but I just never know where to start. So I'm like, well, what topics do you need? When I write things, it's the same way. I know what I want to talk about, but I never know how to start. Asking AI to come out with a outline for me or something like that is great. So I'm doing my PC wants to reboot and install Windows 7. Great timing. When I'm doing a presentation, I'll often have it create an abstract for me, and then if that abstract is accepted, I'll go back into AI later and say, I have this abstract. I don't know where to start. Give me an outline. The talk's going to be 60 minutes. The audience is going to be, IT professionals in the M365 space, and it's about a 200 level talk. And then it gives me an outline. Now, I might scrap 75% of that outline, but I don't have a blank page anymore. I've got some guidance. I kind of got some idea where to go. And so I use it to get rid of the tyranny of the blank page a lot. We're going to talk later about prompts. I mentioned that, but this whole initiate, react, how do you want the AI to work? Phrases like I want to write a program that does something. What's the best way to scramble eggs? Write me a thank you note for whatever. These are good, direct things to ask the AI. But again, knowing what you want the AI to do for you is paramount for that. And then there are a ton of different AI tools to use, and probably 6 more have shown up in the 7 minutes that this presentation's been going on. We've got a slide in the back that kind of talks a little bit about that. But AIs are very much, mission specific. Some of them are bespoke for certain things. So kind of having an idea what the AI landscape looks like will help you get a better experience as well.
I have to say, from my perspective, I'm only familiar with one, and that is our friend Alexa. Cancel. And I'm always very polite because I never know, 50 years from now when they come back and they're going to remember that I'm polite to them and I treat
when
them
the computers take over. I absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I'm such a fan of AI now, because when it takes over, I'm going to say, hey, remember me? I had your back. Yeah,
the AI's going to be torturing me out in the parking lot while it's feeding you all field grapes.
It doesn't matter how nice you are. I just watched Planet of the Apes again,
Yep. So Mark and I were trying to come up with some good real use cases. And these are some of the ones that we have both used a little bit. The thank you notes one is my go-to example. So I'm on a couple of boards for different things and PTOs and that kind of stuff. And this tyranny of the blank page gets me every time. And a year or two ago, one of the schools that I work with had a big carnival and a bunch of local businesses donated things. We had to send out thank you notes. And I just had no idea. Thanks for the stuff, Todd. Thanks for the stuff, Todd. I just had, so I used ChatGPT and I'm like, okay, here I am. I'm the president of this PTO. We just had our spring festival. These businesses gave us stuff. Please write me some thank you notes. And I would give it the business name. And the AI was smart enough to go out and look at the business name. It would customize the thank you note for the business. Like if I said, this is Jim's Bike Shop, it would go out and look about Jim's Bike Shop and say, kids love bikes. Thanks for donating the bike, things like that. I put my buddy Shane Young, who owns Power Apps 911. I did a fake one for him, and it said, said something about that. And I'm like, and put a little barb in there about Shane, and it made a joke about how Shane doesn't know anything. I mean, it's just a really great way to get started on boring tasks like thank you notes. Love it for that.
So Tony had a great comment here too in the chat, which is, it's not necessarily the first prompt. It's the no, I meant as the second prompt.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Conversations. Absolutely. Yeah.
One of the things that I've used AI-ish things for is reposting to Twitter or LinkedIn. When you paste in, so for example, I might tweet something and then copy it and paste it into LinkedIn, and it says, do you want to use do you want us to? I'm getting so confused, Patrick. Do you want to rephrase that to make it more interesting? And so, sure, click the button, and you get a different take on the same thing that you were saying. So that can be helpful. I mean, sometimes it goes a little overboard. It's like the most amazing thing just happened. It sort of feels like you're taking your tweet and turning into a National Enquirer headline, but helpful.
Yep.
Another one is you did it again. Another
Yes.
one is
Stay on that last slide.
in coding. We can either Todd and I do this slightly differently because I have a coding background. He has a more automating background, and so he will tend to ask GitHub Copilot to write him some code, and I will tend to sort of hit tab, and hopefully it'll come up with something interesting to help me get the syntax of something. It's for me, it's a better syntax tool. For him, it's maybe a better sort of construct tool, but in both cases, it can be helpful. Yeah. And then finally, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say we have a whole slide on coding at the end that we'll get into.
Yep. And then one thing that I've heard almost everybody, there's one person who's disagreed with this, but summarizing Teams calls, that should add an S on it, sorry, is something that most people find very helpful. Whether you've attended the call and you just want to know basically the main things that happened, or you missed it and you want to know the main things that happened, you have to have recorded the call to get a transcript so that Copilot has something to work with. But it can really be a helpful summary of a Teams call, and it'll even tell you what action items came out of it, which is cool.
That's a funny one. So I had lunch with some buddies yesterday, and one of them is a nerdy kind of guy, but not a professional nerd. He's got an engineering degree. But I was talking about how we were going to be doing this tomorrow. And the first thing out of his mouth was, "Oh, I use that to summarize Teams calls that I skip." It was the very first thing out of his mouth. So.
I saw somebody, I think at the conference, the Microsoft 365 conference, tweeted out something about it gives you the right, something like it gives you the right not to go to the meeting or something like that.
Oh.
Maybe if none of us go to the meeting and Copilot just tells us what should have happened, we'll be in better shape.
It could read our emails, all those, those meetings that could have been emails. We can send the emails, have Teams make the meeting out of the email, and then summarize that for us and email it to us. That would be great. Yeah, I love that.
And I'm going to step in here with a prompt and make sure we're staying on task here.
Patrick. Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about the example here, what's been going on in Praxis on another slide. But basically, prompts are more like conversations, and Todd mentioned that. It's sort of like talking to another person. So, hey, Todd, tell me more stuff about this thing that I'm writing about, or something I need to summarize. But you might not always get exactly the answer you want. So you want to refine, or like who said it in Tony said, maybe your second question is the one that gets you what you want. So don't get frustrated by the first response. Refine what you're asking for. Sometimes we say things that just aren't all that clear, and actually maybe it'll help us talk to people in our families. And then, in a sense, existing documents.
Take the emotion out of it.
A little bit. Existing documents or existing text can be prompts in themselves, right? You're essentially feeding some information, whether it's in the form of a question that you've typed or said, or a blob of text, or a document, or a meeting recording, or whatever. And each of those are essentially inputs. They're prompts to the whole process and can get you information back.
Yeah. I love your example on the next slide. As much as I love AI, your next slide is a great example.
So I was writing a newsletter, a thing in our latest newsletter, and what I ended up with is the blue box on the right. But and I wrote about it in the blue box, but I asked what's been going on at Praxis, and Copilot told me a bunch of things that just aren't true. We We had 2 new employees and with names, and I had no idea who those people were. We had 3 new clients in industries that we're not working in. It didn't just hallucinate; it made stuff up, and I have no idea where it got it from. So I think that the important thing here is to again, I think Todd's point that it's like talking to a person is a really useful frame of mind, because people sometimes tell you things that you don't agree with or that aren't true or whatever. And so you have to take some of it with a grain of salt. So when it told me those things, I abandoned using Copilot to help me out and actually wrote about the fact that Copilot didn't help me out. So maybe that was a useful use of Copilot, but probably not the intended one.
Yeah, and so not only is AI kind of like a person, but it's like a person that really, really wants to please you. Like it's almost like a puppy in that regard. So in times like this where, you asked what was going on at Simpraxis, chances are it just didn't have enough. It didn't know what to say, but it wanted to say something really bad, so it just made something up. But yeah, I love our 2 new Phantom employees and our 3 new
Yeah.
clients. They've all been a joy to work with, haven't caused any problems at all.
They haven't gotten anything done either.
So that's
all right. So again, in the spirit of this Copilot session, I took the text from that newsletter and asked PowerPoint Copilot to create some slides from it. So this is what it turned that text into, and there are 3 slides here. But it's still hung on to those 3 new clients, 2 new employees, 2 new awards that we haven't received. It basically took the same constructs that I complained about in my article and turned them into new slides with a cool picture of an iceberg. So I think my lesson in these 3 slides sort of go together, and they're just illustrative. But I think my point here is that not the original assistance that Copilot gave me wasn't actually all that useful. But when I asked it to use what I had written about that, it actually sort of magnified the problem. It made it worse. So I think that the important thing here is that you need to understand that the input that you're giving Copilot is going to have a huge impact on the value of what you get out. So we talk a lot about getting your information architecture right and making sure permissions are correct, so that Copilot is actually looking at a set of content that is valid, current, that you have a right to see, so that when it gives you answers, those answers are actually something that you can use and do something with. So
Yeah.
Next, if you go to the next
And
slide.
to be fair, the slides, it did not automatically pick up our template either.
No, it
we
did
added
not.
the template after the fact, so
That's right.
it just came in as a very blah slide with a picture.
Right. So
not that
so
I'm
I think,
offending, not that I'm offending an AI at all.
no.
It's
No,
they are
you
just
talking
learning.
bad about you.
respect it, yeah, but you, yeah. So to me, the moral of the story is always trust but verify. And I didn't realize that was a quote from Ronald Reagan until I went trying to find an image about it.
Oh yeah.
So you really do have to take what Copilot is giving you in any context and see if it holds up to your tests. On the right side is me talking to Copilot and asking for an image about trust but verify, and it went nowhere. It's like, I'm sorry, I can't do that, basically. So I went, and as it suggested, I went out to the internet and tried to find an image that would work. So sometimes helpful, sometimes not. I'd actually rather have it tell me that it doesn't know what's been going on at Simpraxis instead of hiring new people for us who I've never met. But you just have to test the veracity of what it's giving you to make sure that it's going to hold up for what you're using it for.
Yeah, and so I use ChatGPT a lot more than Copilot, and When it comes to LLMs and generative AI, there's this concept of temperature, which is essentially setting the AI how much it can make up and how much it can't. So a temperature of 1 means just, pull stuff straight out of wherever you pull stuff out of. And a temperature of zero point 0.1 means everything's got to be rock solid true. And with ChatGPT, you can tell it that. You can either with your system prompt or with your regular prompt, you can set the temperature by default. It's like 0.7, something like that. So on the other side of, on the closer side to making stuff up, I wonder if you can set the temperature with Copilot, and then if that would impact that at all. It's an interesting thing. I haven't tried that yet. So one of the things that I use AI for a ton is coding assistance, and Mark's talked about that a little bit earlier. I generally use ChatGPT mostly because when I started doing it, that was the tool that was out. GitHub Copilot wasn't available to everybody yet, and so I just kind of got used to using ChatGPT. GitHub Copilot inserts itself into your IDE of choice, which for me is VS Code, and then it can do a couple of different things. So it reads your code and watches, and I use example. It's kind of like pair programming. So there was that thing for about 7 minutes in the 90s or I guess maybe early 2000s, where pair programming was a thing. So you would take two programmers, sit them in the same cubicle next to each other, and have them write the same code and agree on stuff, things like that. And this is kind of like that with GitHub Copilot. So you're writing code, and I comment all of my code because I'm a terrible coder, and chances are the next time I look at my code, I'm not going to remember what the hell I was doing. So when you do that, GitHub Copilot will read your comments and suggest code for you based on what you want the code to do. So that's kind of handy, and it's also got an interactive thing where you can ask it questions about stuff. But I like it. It suggests stuff that's good. It suggests stuff that's not good. But this is one of the when Mark and I were talking about this slide, I was talking about the whole treat AI like a person. I'm like, well, this is kind of like Mark and I's interactions when we program. One of us will ping the other one when we're working on something, say, hey, will you take a look at something? I'm trying to do a thing, and sometimes that other person is really helpful, and sometimes that person is just a pain in the butt and completely useless. And that's really how AI
So that's when you're asking me, right?
I was thinking it was the other way around, but however, but it's that same thing. So you just have to set your expectations correctly. And with GitHub Copilot, I tried to find some backing for this because I sat through a session on this, and they talked about what it uses for its corpus, and it uses your code both from your prompt back and from your prompt forward. So if you're in the middle of your code, it should be able to figure out what's going on. Your other open tabs, it can also use some of that to figure out what to suggest things with. And then it's got its own corpus of things that it's been trained on. So I've tried to test that. Like I will have a tab open with some kind of chunk of code in it that's commented, and then I'll add a comment similar to see if it fills that same code in. It hits sometimes, but not as often as I think it should. You can buy this. It's $10 a month for individuals, or $20 a month if you have a corporate license. But if I had to choose between this and ChatGPT, I'd always pick ChatGPT. But this is handy. I use it. I like it. Speaking of ChatGPT, the best phrase that I've ever heard discuss this is it's like it's having a genie in a bottle. And that's exactly how I treat it. Write me some thank you notes. I have this wish. I wish you'd write me some thank you notes. I wish whatever. And just like Genie, sometimes you get exactly what you want and sometimes you don't. So you have to be careful with that. So with ChatGPT, you can set up a system prompt so you can give it things that are always true. So I've got in mind, I write code with PowerShell. I work with Microsoft 365. I play guitar, I drive a Trans Am, that kind of stuff. And then when I ask questions, I don't always have to set the context as tightly. But if I wasn't doing that, I would start something, write me some PowerShell code that scans a directory and looks for pictures of Patrick, something like that. And then it would give me some code that does that. And then, like Tony mentioned earlier, I would continue to have a conversation with it. I would say, okay, now I want, this type of file, turn this into a function, add this parameter. That's one of the things when I code that I find AI does the best for me is it takes the code that I would have otherwise given to a client or ran myself and makes it even better. It, quickly turns it into a function. It writes examples for me. It formats things for me, speeds things along. And that's $20 a month. I use that for coding. I use it for all kinds of stuff. Every little problem I think of. I go to Google or Bing less these days, and a lot of times I will go to ChatGPT with questions, and I get my $20 a month worth, I feel.
Speaking of those other options there, Todd.
Yeah. So there are chatbots for everybody, whatever you're doing. This one, I kind of just put in so people would have an idea what to, just kind of the art of the possible sort of thing. And I mentioned that there are a lot of bespoke AIs. So while ChatGPT can make images and videos for you, it uses OpenAI's other products in the back end. There are other ones like Midjourney that do an even better job. If you're already using Adobe products, Firefly is built into their stuff, and it will make things for you. 11 Labs is a good one. I've got a buddy that does a lot of video presentations, and he uses 11 Labs to do the voiceover work, and it saves him literally hours a project because he can have 11 Labs use his voice and do a voiceover for a customer and do like a 45-minute voiceover in 3 minutes. It's just insane the amount of time that it saves him. So there's individual ones for that. The other thing I wanted to mention is there are a ton of open source LLMs, these large language models, and so there's a lot of different places you can host them. Azure has a platform where you can host models, and so they've got a list in there. But if you go to huggingface.co, you can download a framework that you can run on your own PC, and then download these LLMs and run them locally. And while that's generally slower than running them in the cloud, it's fun because then you can get in and tweak some of the things, and you can see what knobs and levers there are in the background. And I've had a lot of fun with that. I've run some local LLMs, and again, now you've got this idea. You can go out to Hugging Face because they also have a billion different models out there. You can find one that does just speech and play with it a little bit and generate your own speech if you don't want to get a subscription to 11 Labs, something like that. PDF AI was an interesting one. I use ChatGPT for this, but PDF AI is an AI that you can use to have conversations with a PDF file. So one of the examples that I've used this for, though I use ChatGPT for it, was, again, I mentioned I'm on the president of the PTO at my kid's grade school, and we've got this huge long PDF document that was authored 100 years ago, probably originally on Stone, about all of the things that the PTO does. And somebody was asking about how the elections went and whether we had to do whatever. I just drug the PDF into ChatGPT, and I'm like, tell me about what the election process needs to look like. And it read the PDF for me and gave me all the answers. And to be sure that I knew what I was doing, I went through and found the section where it was at, and sure enough, it was right. So that's another one of those crazy things that you don't think about is you've got a really big PDF, just drag it into your AI and ask some questions, and it works really well.
And just a comment, huggingface.com is a bunch of emojis. Huggingface.co, which you said, but I mistyped it. Gives you an AI thing.
Yep. And in the chat, Tony mentioned, I'd mentioned the temperature thing before. And yeah, in Copilot, it's a setting, conversation style, more creative, more balanced, more precise. I assume that's tweaking the temperature in the background. Yeah. Yep. Good find, Tony.
Okay. Was there more there, Todd? You got another couple seconds if you want to fill that.
So there's a ton of AI podcasts and things like that out there. Yeah, we're on to we can go to the next one.
Yeah, we just provided some references as we usually do, the Copilot Connection podcasts, Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365, GitHub Copilot, stay informed.
Yeah, of course, the Microsoft 365 conference is going on right now, and they're talking about Copilot endlessly.
Probably at this very minute.
There's one article that came out of that context, but there will undoubtedly be a lot more this week.
And speaking of conferences, so our next task in practice, May 15th, the SIMP AMA. See Todd at Techorama in Antwerp, May 6th through 8th. The European Collaboration Summit, May 14th through 16th, with Julie and Derek. TechCon Seattle, I believe Derek is going to be there. And then TechCon 365, Julie, Derek, and is anyone else going to that one, Mark?
I'll be there. Yep.
Oh, Mark will be there too. And there we have it.
And I think next
Just
week,
in
I think we changed our topic. I think we're going to probably talk about what they're talking about right now at the M365 conference. I think we'll we got some boots on the ground there taking copious notes for us, and we'll have a full recap of that in 2 weeks.
Of course, they'll be at the European
I was gonna say,
Collaboration
they won't be
Summit.
here.
Well, they will give us their copious notes, and we will
We'll-
read them.
We'll
for
squeeze
you.
their heads and get knowledge out of them first.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Ask and Praxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues.